When people think of Long Island, they picture beaches and the Hamptons, but there's so much more. We're taking you beyond the summer crowds to uncover the history, adventure, and hidden gems most visitors never see. Long Island stretches over 100 miles from New York City to Montauk, and is divided into two distinct regions. Nassau County in the western third is more suburban, while Suffolk County, covering the eastern two-thirds, is more rural. In this episode, we're exploring Nassau's history, aviation, and hidden gems, and in our final episode, we'll head east to uncover Suffolk County's coastal landscapes and wildlife destination. This is Sagamore Hill, the home of America's most adventurous president, Teddy Roosevelt. Young Theodore was born into a wealthy family, but himself was a sickly child, suffering from frequent asthma attacks. His father had frequently enjoyed the wilderness in Oyster Bay as a getaway from the poor air quality in New York City, and the future president fell in love with this location. From a young age, he discovered that a strong athletic regimen proved helpful for his asthma, and his physical discipline, coupled with his insatiable curiosity to learn, followed him throughout his years. His father was his idol, and his most lasting lesson was that being born into a wealthy situation is only good if one uses that wealth and power to better the positions of others. Teddy's entire career in public service was driven toward that goal. A docent-led tour of Sagamore Hill weaves these themes together seamlessly, providing both wide-angle and close-up perspectives of the mind of the 26th president.
The library of the house. So when this became the summer White House, he ran everything from this room. You're looking at the presidential office. Okay, he's the first president to run the government from his home. Now, since that was the case, all the diplomats of the world at the time, all his advisors, everybody was here. Plus, they knew everybody. Muir, Firestone, Edison, Remington, they were all here. They had dinner here. So you're walking through a huge amount of history in this house.
Roosevelt's home is filled with his personality, massive taxidermy, gifts from world leaders, and stories of adventure. His sons carried on his legacy, serving in both world wars. Here's the Teddy Roosevelt Museum at the old Orchard House, which was Teddy Roosevelt Jr.'s house here on the Sagamore Hill property. It gives information about Teddy Roosevelt's life, even his early young life, bringing up his raising into a wealthy family and the influence that his father had of, you may be born into wealth, but you must use your wealth for good. Mother and first wife dying shortly after the birth of his first daughter on Valentine's Day, on the same day. And Teddy Roosevelt goes out west, purchasing 2 ranches in the Dakotas as part of his attempt to deal with the grieving. But then it goes into much more of the more well-known positions of Teddy Roosevelt's life with the Rough Riders, the cavalry unit, the Spanish-American War, Sagamore Hill, and then his political life with the Navy as governor of New York, becoming vice president. And then becoming president, accidentally through the assassination of William McKinley in Buffalo, New York. Beyond the house, a short hike leads to Roosevelt Family Beach, a place where he spent time with his children and found peace in nature. Keep in mind that if you do the nature trail here at Sagamore Hill, there's a bit of a decline here from the hill down toward the water. So, knees, mobility, whatnot. Just be mindful. It's not a terrible difficult height. It's about 0.7 of a mile. Much of this is private property. This is Teddy Roosevelt's family beach at Sagamore Hill. Keep your eyes on the stars. Keep your feet on the ground. Theodore Teddy Roosevelt, Medal of Honor, Spanish-American War, hero of San Juan's Hill, 26th President of the United States, champion of conservation, the National Park Service, and trust busting. One of the greatest Americans and American presidents. Our next stop brings us to the American Airpower Museum, housed within the former Republic Aviation Facility, a site that played a crucial role in American military aviation history. Republic Aviation was once one of the most important aircraft manufacturers in the country, producing legendary fighter planes like the P-47 Thunderbolt. As technology evolved, so did Republic Aviation. After World War II, this facility produced aircraft like the F-84 Thunderjet, one of America's first fighter jets, and then later the F-105 Thunder Chief, a key player in the Vietnam War. This hangar witnessed the entire evolution of military aviation, from piston engine fighters to supersonic jets, and it's all available for visitors to see. Part of what makes the American Airpower Museum so special is that it's not just a collection of artifacts and old military airplanes. It is a living history experience. You can stand beside the legendary aircraft. You can watch the legendary aircraft take flight, as many or most of the museum pieces are fully operational. These planes get taken out during special events for flight. They maintain their airworthiness, and visitors, on occasion, could even ride along in the air in these World War II aircraft. You could also sit inside of a real fighter cockpit, hear the engines roar, and see up close how Republic Aviation shaped American airpower. If you're an aviation enthusiast or just love history, this is definitely a must-visit stop while you're on Long Island. The museum also shines a light on the unsung heroes of aviation history, including the women Air Force service pilots who broke barriers during World War II, and the legendary Tuskegee Airmen, the first African-American fighter pilots who paved the way for future generations. And while many come to see the World War II aircraft, veterans and their families of all ages can enjoy exhibits ranging from World War II all the way through Vietnam and even to the Gulf War, all that had their origins at this location on Long Island. The American Airpower Museum is quite small, but it is fascinating. Military planes back from the 30s, even through the 70s, they have displays here of fighter planes from the wars, from World War I through World War II and Vietnam and Korea, even up through Desert Storm and the Gulf War. Jet engines, cockpits, replicas of atomic bombs, paratrooper aircraft, tank busters. If anybody is a fan of military aircraft, you would definitely want to come on out here to this place. Charles Lindbergh, Spirit of St. Louis, became airborne. About a quarter of a mile down that way, past that parking garage, inside this shopping center. Obviously, he did not become airborne inside of a shopping center because it was not a shopping center. But right here is where he began his flight. memorial here to Charles Lindbergh and the Spirit of St. Louis. I don't know how well you could see that, but taking off from North America, from Long Island, landing in Paris. (3,610 miles non-stop, 33 hours and 30 minutes. Beginning his flight here, becoming airborne about a quarter of a mile in there. Revolutionized air transportation and aviation. Integral to the world it is today because of Charles Lindbergh and the Spirit of St. Louis. We're on the ground of the old Mitchell Field, now home to multiple locations, but also the Cradle of Aviation Museum. It was not far from here at all that Charles Lindbergh made his record-breaking flight across the Atlantic. Long Island, Cradle of Aviation, due to the winds and the open land that was here at the time. As soon as you walk in, you have these fantastic space shuttle exhibits with the tire, the lower fin section here from the space shuttles. It's easy just to get drawn to the right, but there is a map right over here from where you enter, and it follows around all the way through and then comes back. So the space section is the end, and you'd want to start right here, straight through, with the dreams of wings and the ideas of how to fly. Gliders, balloons, kites, whatever it takes to try to get in the air. Fascinating exhibit on kites here, simply because we all know about kites. But kites were some of the first things that helped us understand some of the science and the engineering behind what we would now know as flight, how the winds and the air move, and how different types of fabrics or different types of materials, designs, or engineering could be manipulated through the air. And gases that are lighter than air as well, how you can work with airships, blimps, balloons, and the such, how you can control them. Balloons will just drift around in the wind. They can be slightly controlled, maybe high or low, but that was about it. So then how can you steer them? Some of these early attempts at flight we look at now and we think, oh, these things look so weird or strange. But that's part of the innovation process and the experimentation process, to try to figure out how to capitalize on lift and the winds and drag and propulsion. And then, of course, it was Orville Wright becoming the first to fly an engine-powered aircraft in controlled flight. Notice all of the qualifiers there. So there were several others that had maintained some type of flight, whether it was controlled, uncontrolled, with engines, without engines. Lasted only 12 seconds, but it changed the world forever.
Long before paved runways, early pilots needed large, flat spaces to safely take off and land. We remember the Wright brothers at Kitty Hawk, but the Hempstead Plains, with its open terrain and steady winds, became a natural testing ground for aviation pioneers. Here on Long Island, some of the very first aircraft took flight, setting the stage for the region's deep connection to aviation.
It's just fascinating to see how important Long Island was to the development of flight, experimental airplanes, aviation races and such, and then the creation of aviation schools, which then allowed for some of these tinkerers and inventors to be able to maximize the aircraft for military use, what would be important for World War I. the first time that aircraft were used in combat. Charles Lindbergh, transatlantic air race of 1927. He actually flew cross-country from San Diego to New York. He was called the Lone Eagle because he was actually going to be flying alone compared to the others. So it was a solo flight in a single engine. And many people thought him to be a fool. But he was quite experienced from other types of flight, other types of experience that he had as an airmail pilot and such. And then where we stand, Roosevelt Field, the largest and busiest civilian airfield in America in the 1930s. Charles Lindbergh's Spirit of St. Louis. This is not the original Spirit of St. Louis. However, this type of airplane, there are 4 total remaining of this type, style, original airplane. This was spruced up to look like the Spirit of St. Louis for the movie. For the Jimmy Stewart 1957 movie, Spirit of St. Louis. And this was one of the original styles of aircraft. Whole exhibit here on the golden age of aviation. Aircraft made on Long Island, aircraft flown from Long Island, charter flights, flying across the ocean.
This museum continues to dive into the crucial role that Long Island played in the history of aviation, as well as its impact in World War II and beyond, into the rise of the Pan Am Company and the development of commercial air travel.
The role of Pan Am in the continued development of commercial air flight. Luxury airlines, Air Force One, modern airport terminal designs, and global flights.
With so many facets of aviation's history on display, it's no wonder that entire sections would be dedicated to Long Island's role in rocketry and spaceflight. But perhaps the coolest exhibits in the entire museum, at least for space nerds like me, are actual parts of the space shuttle that have been in space and that you can touch with your own hands.
So many air and space museums have information on the space shuttle program and so on and so forth. Throughout the country, you can see actual space shuttles. You can see the Space Shuttle Discovery. You can see the Endeavour, the Enterprise, the Atlantis across the country, and we've seen all of them, some of which are on the channel already. But here, this is from the Space Shuttle Endeavour. This is an actual tire that's been flown, touchdown at 220 miles an hour. To actually touch space vehicle parts that have been in space. This is cool. And it doesn't end there. That's not just it either. From the Space Shuttle Discovery, you have a lower fin section. Vertical stabilizers were actually built by the Fairchild Republic Corporation in Farmingdale here in Long Island. And yes, you see a space shuttle up close, you will see the fabric, the parts are all numbered. An original section of the fin, the part right below the rudder from Discovery, flown into space 6 times. The rudder was also made by Fairchild Republic. I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I very well could make mistakes, but Fairchild Republic in Farmingdale is the location of the American Airpower Museum. That was Fairchild Republic. This is so darn cool. Here in Cold Spring Harbor, we're going to check out the Whaling Museum and Education Center. Looks like it's pretty small, but we're going to give this thing a whirl and learn about the whaling industry here in Long Island.
Perhaps not as famous or well known as others, back in the 1800s, Cold Spring Harbor was a thriving whaling port. Sailors would set out on months-long voyages hunting whales for their valuable oil, used in lamps, candles, and even early machine lubricants.
Here's a model of the Charles W. Morgan from New Bedford, Massachusetts, currently located in Mystic, Connecticut.
One of the museum's most striking pieces is the authentic 19th century whaleboat, the same kind used by whalers to approach massive sperm whales out on the open ocean. Whalers often spent long hours at sea, and they passed the time by carving intricate designs into whale bones and teeth. This art form, known as scrimshaw, is one of the most unique maritime traditions, and the display here at the Whaling Museum in Cold Spring Harbor is very impressive. Whaling wasn't just hard work, it was a full-on sensory experience, and not always in a good way. The museum even lets you smell what life was like at sea, from the pungent aroma of processing whale blubber to the not-so-fresh scent of a whaler's quarters after months away from shore. And let's just say, it's an experience we won't forget anytime soon.
That is quite putrid there.
What? You about to barf?
It smells like your bedroom.
Especially for families, this museum is the perfect mix of fun and education. Kids can explore history by touching, smelling, and even climbing into exhibits. It's a great way to introduce young explorers to Long Island's maritime past while keeping them engaged with plenty of interactive activities.
7.5 foot sperm whale jaw. A juvenile sperm whale jaw. With all its teeth intact. It's pretty big. Representations of whales over time. Then we have bone fragments and casts and an orca skull. Compared to the skull of a mouse. The Whaling Museum was pretty neat, especially if you have a smaller, younger kids, somewhere in that 3 to 8 or 9 range. This would be great for them. Pretty neat, pretty small, but a lot of hands-on activities for the kids. They'll do scavenger hunts or craft activities and different things as well. But if you're ever around, come on in, check it out. They do have really interesting things about whaling from Long Island, the whaling industry as a whole, the changes of whaling from earlier times to modern times, the decline of the whaling industry, and really why it declined, whether it was due to oil or not, or other types of things. But good times.
Just down the road is another unique spot where fish, not whales, are the stars of the show. The Cold Spring Harbor Fish Hatchery is a hidden gem where visitors can get up close with trout, turtles, and even feed the fish themselves.
You'll notice these wires across the top are designed to, there may be some netting across the top from time to time. There's netting over on another one. Designed to keep the fish safe from airborne predators like birds. The different pond areas here, different ages of the fish, of the trout. These are fish that are they are raised for pond and river and lake stocking, for fishing activities at other locations across the state, or they can, townships, municipalities can order the fish here to be stocked. Full-scale netting on, much more full-scale netting on top of this one. I don't know if, yeah, there you go, we can see through there. These guys are bigger. You could also feed the fish. You can purchase fish food along with your admission. We'll check out the rainbow trout in pool number 4. These guys were hatched December of 2023. Rainbow trout. More netting up on the top to protect these guys from birds and herons and eagles and falcons and hawks. All sorts of aerial predators. See them all swarming in there. I wonder if they have buddies and friends and they pal around with each other, or if they just swim along. I don't know. What do you guys think? So all of the water, the turtles and the warm water fish, are kept in water that flows from St. John's Pond, located south of here. And it's raw lake water, so it's not processed, there's no filtration. The temperature ranges from 34 to 80 degrees. Once you step away from the glare from the sun and the glare from the water that's cycling through, you could really see down through the bottom here, the clear waters, and see these fish in here. So the waters cycle through really without any extra filtration or whatnot, as far as I can gather. And over here we got some turtles. Bunch of them just sunning right on a log. Certain times of the year, they have activities where they have a catch and release program where you can actually come on out and fish and then release the fish right over here in one of their ponds. Kids programs abound here as well. So we got some brook trout here. They hatched December of 2023. These are some younger ones. There we go. And it looks like there's a hatch house right over there. We'll see if we can check that out. So how they transfer from pool 1 to pool 2. They have these mechanisms over here going through. They would lift the cages or lift the netting, I suppose, to empty them out.
exactly how they would go from 1 and 2 to 3 and 4 across the street, that they may have to have bigger cages and tanks to carry them over. And there's the water coming in. Through the windows. Oh yeah. They're little hatchlings. Let's see if I can get a better view for you. Yeah, you see them all in there. That's standard zoom right there on the camera. So that's how teeny tiny those hatchlings are. I'll zoom in. Zoom in again. These guys are pretty tiny. You can't go into the hatch house, so you are separated out by a window. Obviously, water needs to keep flowing to keep a natural system, a natural ecosystem, so there's not an overbuildup of algae or anything along those lines. Algae, bacteria, keep everything natural. It's got a pond. Floaties provide some natural moving shade. Little signs reminding folks not to toss coins into the pond, as some folks would like to toss coins into ponds. The metal in the coins would be dangerous to the fish and the ecosystem.
After spending plenty of time outside, you can always head on indoors to one of 2 different aquarium houses that they have, showcasing amphibians, reptiles, and fish local to Long Island and the New York City area.
A little crayfish. Little crawdad.
Hey, buddy.
We got a long-nosed gar, as well as rainbow trout. Rainbow trout that are blue, due to genetic mutation. From watching them as the first tiny hatchlings, to watching the rainbow trout and the brook trout grow until they're ready to get stocked into lakes and rivers. The Cold Spring Harbor Fish Hatchery and Aquarium is a pretty neat place. Pretty small place, but you don't get to see this type of thing every day. And then they do have some fun aquarium exhibits inside the 2 different buildings. The white building there, and the brick building across the way. Amphibians, reptiles, turtles, snakes, newts, salamanders, fish, and of course how these species can all be taken care of. Pretty neat place. Low admission price, especially if you got little kids. I'd recommend a visit.
Long Island is more than just beaches and summer escapes. Many people forget that before you even reach the coastal resorts, there's an entire side of Long Island rich in history, culture, and hidden gems, especially here in Nassau County, just outside New York City. And with so much to explore, it only makes sense to stay somewhere that's a piece of Long Island history itself. Let's check in at the East Norwich Inn, a hotel with a storied past and a surprising musical connection. The East Norwich Inn shares a property with Rothman Steakhouse, dating back to the 1850s and serving such guests as Teddy Roosevelt, Jacqueline Kennedy, and Elizabeth Taylor. But in the 1970s, the hotel was purchased by none other than legendary musical performer Burt Bacharach, who also spent many nights sleeping in one of the suites on site. Though ownership has changed hands since Bacharach's time, the walls are adorned with awards, photos, postcards, and memorabilia, as well as framed artwork of the hotel and community's storied past a century earlier. The facilities are quite nice, with plenty of lobby space and a full breakfast area. However, be advised that despite the nice breakfast area, the hotel no longer serves breakfast, citing cost reasons. And although the inn is 2 stories, there are no elevators. All second-floor accommodations will require the use of the stairs. Long Island's history is as vast as its coastline, and today we've explored just a small part of it. From Sagamore Hill, where Teddy Roosevelt shaped the nation, to the American Airpower Museum and Cradle of Aviation, showcasing Long Island's role as the birthplace of modern aviation. This region is packed with stories that go far beyond the beaches. We've stepped into the world of whalers, explored marine conservation, and even checked into a hotel with a surprising musical legacy. But we're not done yet. Next, we'll be diving into some of the most legendary food spots in Nassau County, from old-school pizzerias to iconic bagel shops. And after that, we'll head all the way out to the East End, where we'll explore Montauk, historic landmarks, and some of Long Island's most scenic landscapes. So, if you're enjoying this deeper look at Long Island, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. We'll see you in the next one.